Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, going to do a review of the Osprey Electronics, the E100. So we're going to go over that FPGA, going to give my thoughts about it, we'll look at profitability, and we'll compare it to some of the others, see if it's worthwhile, right? So if that sounds good guys, stay tuned, alright? So let's get to it. So before we even really start, just want to fully say this is not like a sponsored review or didn't get any kind of discount, nothing like that. I bought it just like any of you, and these are going to be my thoughts on it, right? So it's kind of the only real reviews I like doing is things that I actually purchased with my own money, bought it at retail, just like everybody else. Now I can give my full-blown opinion on it, right? I don't have to get swayed either way. Just able to tell you guys like it is, right? So let's start off with the unit. So I did get the E100, not the E300, right? The 300 is essentially 3 boards, right, of the FPGA, and that comes in at 5200. I went with the E100, which is just a single board, so it's going to be a third of the specs of the E300, right? So it's not a third of the price, though. A little bit higher, right? You're paying that slight premium for having that benefit, but I did want to just dabble in a little bit, right? Essentially just, to add a little variety to the mix. So the E100 on KASPA, which is the main bitstream that they currently do have or that it's most famous for, it's about 4.6 gigahash at about 150 watts, right? Kind of depends on where you clock it at. Now with these newer ones, you are able to clock it a little bit higher. They did add some heat sinks now to a certain area on the board. That way you can overclock it with their new firmware. So you are able to go a little bit higher, right? So it does come in currently now at 1939. At the time when I purchased it, it was about 1800, so it did go up a little bit. Overall thoughts on the ordering process was easy, right? Purchased it. Their timeline was on point. Had no issues there. I did end up going with the version with the Noctua fans only because the plan was to actually have it inside, right? So the fact that they had that option, that was pretty cool. One thing that they didn't mention is that they actually will also send you the original fans, right? So that was a nice surprise a few weeks later. They didn't have any mention of it. They just showed up. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So one interesting factor that I also did like, and that kind of like had me swayed a little bit, was the fact that it's almost modular, right? Meaning that you can actually, as you go on here, like let's say you do like it or a bitstream comes out, man, that looks super efficient, you can actually add another board to it if you'd like, right? So if you want, you can add another board. They do run, what, 1700, so it'll bring you back to 3600, so that way you have 2/3 of the full one, right? So if you didn't want to fully commit to that big guy, but you wanted to dabble in and maybe see how it was, it did give you the option that to add another board, or you could add the 3 boards, right? But again, you are paying that premium for having that option, right? Just something to factor in. Some quick thoughts. It is very user friendly, right? So it does set up like your traditional ASIC. You log into it, you find your IP address with an advanced IP scanner, you log into it. The GUI is nice. It's easy. It's in English. You input your wallet address, put in your pool. Within 5 minutes, it's up and running, right? It didn't have to, none of this thing with like the Molt Miner where it took about a week to finally like fully bake in and get to the hash rate it's supposed to. It's within, what, 30 minutes. It was already at what it was supposed to be at, right? It's also very user friendly for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with a lot of these things, because again, a lot of these ASICs or FPGAs, you're just getting the hardware, right? This guy actually does come with the whole manual, which was kind of surprising. It's pretty cool, again, for any of you guys looking for something easy to set up. It's very detailed. It does have all the information you need on there, right, to get started. So that is very cool. For those of you guys who are looking for, kind of intimidated by these things, they make it very, very easy, right? So let's look at profitability, right, which right now is not too hot. So currently we have it plugged in for the KASPA hash rate, right? So about 4600 mega hash, so that's your 4.6 gigahash, about 160 watts. And even right now, with this downward price action, it's still profitable. It's still $1 in profit, right? So the key thing here is just how efficient it is compared to GPUs, right? Even comparing it to like a 4090, for example, it is more efficient than that. and it's essentially the equivalent in hash of two 4090s, but at about half the wattage, right? And realistically, if you double this, right, it would be about 500 watts, comparing it to the 150, 160 watts for that. So in that aspect, it's about a third of the power. So twice the hash at a third of the power in comparison to a 4090, which retails at 1600. So it'd be 3200 bucks, right? In comparison to this guy, again, when I bought it, it was 1800. It's currently at 1900 and change, right? So that's the main appeal with not only this FPGA, but any of the FPGAs. It's just that density factor, right? It's the equivalent of a lot of GPUs that usually more efficient, right? Especially with these newer FPGA chips, right? Some of these older chips, like that Molt Miner M2, does use way older chips, and a lot of them, and it's a very different setup, but it's less efficient, but you are getting that same benefit of the density aspect, right? Which to me was the main appeal with both of these, right? So now let's look at how easy it is to use, right? So when you log in, so you go to Advanced IP Scanner, do a scan, shows up, boom, click on the thing, E300, log into it, and here is the GUI, right? So you go into the miner, and this is where you pretty much set it up, right? You look at your developer, that's who's making the bit stream, pick your bit stream. It's currently running Team Red Miner because it's that KASPA. Again, you pick your algo here, which they have KASPA and ETC hash. Put in your pool, pull in your wallet address, your worker name, go. That was literally it, right? You can mess with the clocks. You can do some of those things. So if you go on their Discord, which I'd highly recommend, you can go on there so you can get some opinions on different clocks you can run and go from there, right? But essentially did that, and it was up and hashing within a few minutes. You can see more status things on here. You can see the temperature, which mine is currently high because I did turn the fan down, right? Turn it down to 5 because this thing is actually about 5 feet away from me, right? Putting the fan at 5 on the Noctuas, you can barely hear it, right? Realistically, it's going to be like when you have it on auto, it's closer to like the 9-10 range, right? Which is kind of loudish, right? But it's definitely not that like ASIC squeal. If you have it in a separate room and you have the door closed, the sound will stay in there, right? So it is something to factor in, and that's one of the big appeals with it is the fact that it's such low wattage. You can have these Noctuas on it because it's low wattage, it's also low heat, right? So something to factor in. So this is where you can do more configurations, but again, you can see your chip temp, you can see all that. Here's where you would do your fan speed adjustments. So I have it put it on manual and put it at level 5, again, just for noise right now, just so you're not hearing it right now while I'm doing this video. Go over here to update your firmware. It is on auto update currently. You can change some of the IP settings in here, but overall, very easy to use, zero issues logging in, real quick. Again, it does come, for any of you guys who aren't familiar, it does come with that manual and goes into detail for those of you guys who are new to these kinds of things. It is all in there, right? So pretty cool stuff there. So right now, the only current algos or the bit streams are KASPA and the ETC hash. What looks like is going to be next is most likely RxD, right? Which is going to be Radiant. They've been talking about it. They've been saying soon. Hopefully it does come out before these KASPA ASICs come out. That way we can switch pretty much right on time. They haven't really released any estimates yet. My estimate's going to be somewhere between 6 to 7 gigahash, just purely basing it on the comparison of KASPA between this guy and the Molt Miner, right? The Molt Miner is essentially about double of what an E100 is, right? So on RxD, for example, because the Radiant bitstream is already available for that M2, and that gets about 13.5 to 14 gigahash. So again, if we half that, it's going to bring us down to about 7 gigahash, right? So I'm guessing it's going to be between 6 to 7. Could be more, could be less, but should be within that ballpark, right? So basing off of this estimate, putting it in at 7 gigahash at about 160 watts, your daily profitability may be about $1.69, right? Which is, I know it sounds super low, but you got to factor in how much everything has gone down. Again, the main thing you want to focus on is your yield, right? This is the big thing, is that because of the yield, right, the fact that it's so efficient, that's what's going to continue to make it profitable over a lot of the GPUs. A lot of GPUs are Like 3070s and stuff are just about break even, right? Versus this guy, it's still fairly profitable, and it's because of how efficient it is. But again, don't focus too much on the daily profitability. Look at your yield, right? Profitability, you just want to make sure that you're not in the negative, right? And then just keep on stacking, right? So hopefully we do get this radiant bitstream soon, and it sounds like ironfish may be next. They have been saying ergo for the longest. I remember that's the one that stood out when they first announced it, and when I first heard about it back in October, November, was they were already teasing ergo back then, but it's been how many months later and still hasn't came out, right? So not a good look on that front. They shouldn't have been talking about it unless it was pretty close. But again, hopefully this Radiant one does come out. That's the one that to me is going to be more appealing anyway, just because it's most likely going to be most profitable there anyway, right? So some stuff to think about, right? And the fact that you do have that flexibility with it being an FPGA, right? I did hear a lot of people mentioning that, oh, RIP to the E300s because of KASPA and the hash rate with these ASICs. Well, this is not an ASIC, guys. This is an FPGA, right? So there's no RIP for the E300 because it's going to just go to RxD, and it's going to go to Iron, and it's going to go to the next, and the next, and the next, right? That's the beauty of these units, is that you do have that flexibility to move on. And like we've mentioned in the other GPU videos I've done, is that a lot of these GPU mineable coins are going this route, right? So we're starting to see it now, right? Radiant is officially on FPGA. We saw that with that Molt miner. Hopefully going to be here pretty soon. Same with ironfish, same with the lithium. Even hearing things with this Kyla coin, which we'll see about that thing. But again, other algorithms, and as more algorithms come out, right? That's the beauty, that you have that flexibility. And these are good like long-term holds, right? Again, even you guys with like those Varium C1100s or those FK33s, or even a lot of those old black miners and all that stuff. Again, those things are so old, but again, that's the flexibility you have with FPGAs, that even if you go through a time where there may not be anything profitable, chances are something will eventually come out, right? So another pretty cool aspect to think about there. So now let's compare it to some of the competition, right? Let's compare it to one of the other ones. It's the Varium C1100, which is very, very, very similar to the E100, right? Difference being, number one, what stands out is the current price, which is about $23.71. I know a lot of you guys did pick it up. They did have some kind of like, I don't know if it was an error or some kind of like unannounced sale, but essentially when you added it to cart, it would bring it down to like $1,700, which does put it a little bit better. But keep in mind that, again, it's very similar to the E100. It's almost identical, actually, right? Both in terms of power and wattage, so the efficiency is very similar. The main difference being is that the E100 is a complete unit, right? Minus the power supply, right? But it does have its own shell, its own control board. It's all there, right? With the Varium C1100, you are going to need a motherboard. You are going to need those other components to get it going, right? So just factor that in as well. So to me, the better deal would be the E100 over this guy. The main benefit here, though, is that you have more customization options, being the fact that it is that single board, meaning that you can put it on existing infrastructure, right? Let's say you have a server case, or you have, another rig set up, another frame set up with a good cooling solution. You can plug a whole rig of these on there, right? So it does give you more flexibility for having a bigger deployment, right? So if that's your goal, it kind of depends on what you're looking at, right? So that is something you will have more with these and the FK33s versus this guy, which is meant to be in that case in portions of threes, right? So something to think about there. But again, it's pretty much identical to that. They also do run that same bit stream. I know most of you guys with the C1100 are running that Team Red miner, which is what the E100 also runs on. So again, super, super identical, right? Just the main difference being this guy being a complete standalone unit versus this guy just being the board, essentially, right? Let's compare it now to another popular one, is that FK33, which has been around for quite a while. They've typically been hard to get, right? I tried getting my hands on one last year, and it was freaking hard finding one, right? Even going through like third party, pretty much your only chance was like going through like, CD Telegram or Discord channels, and that was pretty much it, right? Coastal Crypto actually currently does have them available, which is pretty interesting. And it's pretty much half of the other ones, right? So the specs come in at 2.4 gigahash at 70 watts, but also at like half the price, right? So it does scale in there about the same. Just factor in that, again, this guy is going to be less user-friendly because it's just the board, right? You have to supply the motherboard, where you're going to plug it into, your power supply, your bit stream. You got to do all that stuff manually. So if you're not familiar with FPGAs or how they work, again, this is going to be a little bit more difficult. But again, you do have that flexibility of being able to plug it into a bigger unit, right? Or to have a more complete setup if that's your goal, right? So something to factor in there as well. This guy has been around, though. You kind of say it's more battle proven because it has been around. They've been doing their thing. Again, very efficient, low power usage, and they are there. And it's pretty much on scale price point wise, right? And kind of a unique time where actually all of these are currently available, right? Pretty cool stuff. Osprey actually does have a version of their E300 that does have the same thing. So these are VU33s. This guy is also VU33s, essentially 3 of them, right? So the E300, wish they would have used a different naming scheme for this though, just to kind of differentiate other than E300 VU33P. But regardless, again, it's essentially 3 of those in one standalone unit, pretty much identical price, right? 3 of these guys is going to be right under 3 grand. This guy paying a premium, just again, because you're buying the shell, has the control board. It is its own little standalone unit. So something to think about there. In comparison with like the E100, I would probably still go with the E100 and then buy that second board, right? It is a couple $100 more doing that, but you are getting a newer chip essentially, right? Meaning that even though the stats on this algorithm might be the same, maybe because this chip is better, on another algo might perform a little bit better, a little bit more efficient. Something to think about, right? But it is kind of cool that there is another option. They kind of snuck this one on the radar. Maybe they'll do a E100 of these, which is like at $1,000. That would be kind of enticing as well. Again, it's a good starter unit because it's complete. It's easy to use. Something to think about there. We'll look at the profitability of that FK33, which we already did. Let's look at now the Molt Miner, the M2, which is kind of a different style than all of those, right? All of those are like single chips. They're more newer chips. Not like the latest and greatest, but they are newer. Versus this guy, it's almost like a hybrid. It's an FPGA, but built very similar to an ASIC. Not just appearance-wise, the fact that it's like an ASIC chassis, but even the way it's done, right? It does have a lot of chips per board. I think it was, what, 10 chips per board? So in a sense, and then 3 boards, right? Similar to like an ASIC build, but using older FPGA chips, right? I think when I looked them up, these chips were like super old, but it was pretty cool that they were able to repurpose them in this use case, right? And that's also the reason that this guy is so much less efficient than the others, but you're getting a lot more hash than the others, right? So at the time when I purchased this guy, it was when it was first announced, and it was about $1,900, so pretty similar price to the E100, but you're getting twice the amount of hash, right? Also less efficient though, right? About like 3-4 times as much power, but twice the hash for about the same price. Which right now in the bear market, the other one looks more appealing because the other one, you look at it, okay, it's the USD fiat value is more profitable. That one's way more efficient. The difference being is that like in the bull market, or when we do see those bull market type prices, this guy's going to be more appealing just because your yield is going to be so much more, right? You're essentially going to double your yield for 500 watts, right? So factor that in as well. So that's why I kind of decided to get both, one of each, combining them together, creating more efficiency, right? So kind of my little Frankenstein setup. So this guy currently though is at 3 grand, right? Which to me, too high, right? Because then at that point, too high, especially for the quality. I mean, it's kind of luck of the draw, right? Some of us out of the batch, I think there was a handful of us who had either like a bad board or bad chip. So again, not all of them, but the hassle is the fact that we got to RMA them. They got to go back to China, and it's going to take a while to get the board versus Osprey seems to be a lot easier to deal with, right? I know some of you guys did have issues with these as well. And so far from you guys' experience, seemed to seem like it was pretty quick, pretty easy, pretty painless, right? So again, it can happen with any manufacturer. I ended up getting not necessarily a dud, but one of my boards was a dud. So like right now I'm only running on 2 boards. I did just send mine back to Coastal, and then they're gonna send it back over there. But it's gonna probably be a good 4 to 6 weeks, if not longer, to like get that replacement. So we'll see how long it ends up taking there. But again, even on the 2 boards, it's still gonna hash more than the E100, right? So even right now on 2 boards, I'm currently at about 9 gigahash. We'll see what the actual specs come out on the thing, but even on 2 boards, it's for 2 grand, it's still pretty good, right? So that tells you something there. But again, to me, that 3K, it's a little bit too high. At that 2400 and under, that would be the sweet spot. Hopefully, if these prices kind of stay sideways like where they are, maybe the manufacturer will decide to lower the price. Time will tell on that front. But anyways, right now, they currently are out of stock anyway. That batch is sold out, which is more typical of a lot of the FPGAs. Typically, they don't stay around long, especially if we do get another pump in the summer, if we get another pump anytime soon, right? So factor that in there. So if we look at the profitability for the M2, right, this is the big difference, is the revenue, right? Profit-wise, if we look at the KASPA algorithm, this is, again, that's 7.5 gigahash at 850 watts. Profitability looks worse, right? Okay, it's only a cent, and the other one's $1, right? Big difference. You have to look at the grand scheme of things. You have to look at the revenue, right? So you're getting like about double the revenue here. You're getting 135 CAS a day versus a lot less on the other. Let's go back, about 81. So not exactly half, right? A little bit less. But I know people have been able to overclock this guy up to that 9-10 gigahash range. Mine I didn't really mess with at all, just because my temps were like already on the cusp of being way too high. So like overclocking is not even something I'm really looking at, just mainly because of that, right? So mine is in the garage, and it's freaking hot, right? My bit mains are doing well. This guy actually runs hotter than my Antminer, surprisingly, but that'll be a topic for another video. But if we compare it also with the Radiant bitstream, which is the better bitstream, right? It is profitable. It's $1.12, but the main difference being the revenue, right? Gonna get about 1800 RXD at the current hash rate, the current difficulty. So not too bad there. So that is something to factor in. Don't be surprised to see more of these style things, right? Coastal did kind of hint that they're probably going to release another one. I don't know if it's the same manufacturer or another one, but another one may be coming out, so keep your eyes open for that. And also that K10, that superscaler thing that was announced for KASPA essentially. Pretty sure it's just something like this, just on a bigger scale, right? Possibly newer chips. Does seem to be very similar though. So I don't know if we ever got the full verdict, that the confirmation that it is an FPGA, although all signs are there that it is an FPGA. Just don't be surprised to see more things under that concept, right? Don't be surprised to see other manufacturers jump on this bandwagon as well, right? So something to think about there. So overall though, it is kind of a cool time that we even have these options available, right? This guy is sold out right now, but like the FK33, the E100, the E300, that other variant of the E300, the C1100, we're in a pretty unique time where these things are actually available to purchase, right? So factor that in if you're kind of thinking about it. It is a decent way to diversify, just because, again, a lot of these bit streams are hopefully coming out. Overall verdict on the E100, very user-friendly, very newbie-friendly. So far, it's been solid, right? I've had no issues with it. Super flexible because it's such low wattage. Again, 150 watts. A lot of you guys have a PSU you can use. It just uses 6 pins. It's what, 6 pins is all it uses. Again, super easy, super flexible, and so far, to me, it's been solid, right? I would definitely throw the recommendation out there if you're interested in. Again, if you look at profitability, on paper, this thing's not going to ROI anytime soon. You have to focus on the yield and see if the yield to you is going to be worth it, right? Time will tell on how long we have until like a Radiant ASIC comes out, which to me, in my opinion, probably going to be a while, right? Because it's not very popular. If anything, the next ones would be maybe Nexa. Nexa tends to be a little more popular and such. Same with like Ironfish or any of those, but chances are we're going to get this bit stream for Radiant here pretty soon. We'll get one for Ironfish, and hopefully a lot of it, we're rolling the dice on how long we're going to be able to mine until the ASICs come out, right? Which hopefully, to me, I think we're going to have a good little while, right? Time will tell. Next month, freaking Bitmain can announce a Radiant ASIC, but I don't really see that happening, right? But again, I didn't see it happening for KASPA this quick either, so take that for what it's worth, right? So just factor those things in though, right? Again, my main appeal with these is comparing it to GPUs, seeing how not only how much more efficient it is, but just the density aspect. Again, one of these guys is the equivalent of hash of two 4090s and then a third of the wattage comparing to 4090, right? Pretty cool stuff. Even if we do stay sideways, even if these prices do stay in this range, it's going to remain profitable and it's going to be a good way to continue to stack, right? So again, like I mentioned earlier, doesn't mean I'm going all FPGA, no, but I am diversifying a little bit, right? And that was the whole game plan from the beginning, right? Initially, it was just to diversify a little bit, but pretty much in comparison to like GPUs and everything else, maybe only like 20% GPUs, right? I ended up going the initial thought was just to get one ASIC. That turned into two ASICs, now three ASICs, and then two FPGAs. And the only GPU I purchased, I did actually buy a 4090. I did buy an open box 4090 that I did find on Best Buy. That's pretty much been it for GPUs. Only because I try to be as forward thinking as possible, right? And like I mentioned in the others, a lot of these algorithms are just going towards this route, right? So right now it's a kind of a unique and cool time that we do have access to these FPGAs. These bit streams are like lining up perfectly, right? Like this RxD bit stream for M2 came out right before the KASPA ASICs, right on cue, right? And hopefully we continue to get these bit streams, and hopefully it makes sense if you decide to go this route, right? So for me, it's worth it, right? I did sell GPUs to get these. Essentially, this guy actually, Radiant, is what actually paid for them. For those of you guys who've been following, I did buy a good bag back in like October, November when I bought KASPA, and I sold all of it, right? I sold all my RxD for these FPGAs, right? So for me, that was a good turnaround, and it's been working beautifully, right? We'll see how it continues. Again, a lot of risk with these because we don't know. But again, the E100 definitely more user-friendly, more newbie-friendly. I know some of you guys are a little intimidated by some of the others, and it is kind of, right? Something new, something different. There's just not a whole lot of info about it. Not a lot of people talk about them. But hopefully that stuff changes a little bit. But yeah, guys, just wanted to give you my thoughts and opinions. And I know it's kind of all over the place. There's just a lot of thoughts going on, right? There's a lot of things going on. Things have been taking a little turn in the GPU mining world, so see how all that stuff plays on. But luckily, these things are going to be profitable for quite a while, hopefully. We'll see how it works out. We'll see how everything pans out, right? Because again, these things are risky, guys, because we are reliant on the bit streams, right? And that's one thing we're waiting for. That's why, for example, a lot of people have been annoyed with the Osprey just because they've been touting that Ergo bit stream since they debuted, and we're how many months later, and nothing has came out on that front, right? So just keep that in mind, that there is that risk that we are just waiting for bit streams. We'll see how it pans out, right? So again, guys, just want to give you that update. Let me know if any of you guys bought any of these, right? If any of you guys got any E100s, or if it's on your radar, or how your Molt miner's been doing. If any of you guys got one of those M2s, let me know in the comments, right? Let me know what your thoughts are. If you think it's panning out, if you think it's worth it, if you think it's not, let me know, right? So again, thank you for watching, guys. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I am out.